transformation that can happen over the next few months. The empowerment that you'll receive, the tools to take to spread Torah to all types of Jews. You know, tonight, we're all going to experience a class of Mati Berger called Forget About God, Who Am I? And that title means, before you can start to search for a Kadosh Baruch Hu, you need to know what people are looking for. In order to know that, you need to know who you are. Yaakov Avinu had a dream. And in this dream, last week's Parsha, he saw a ladder. And the ladder was on the ground, but the head of the ladder reached Shemayim. The head of the ladder kept on going. And there was no end to this ladder. And the Ramban tells us this ladder is a nevuah, a prophecy of the future generations, of the malach, of the angels that ascended and descended the ladder, represent all the nations of the world that took over from the Jewish people. And the Yavan was going to run, they went up the ladder. Edom was going to run the world, and they went up the ladder. But ultimately, all of them came down the ladder. That's the future of the Jewish people. There's going to be difficult times. The non-Jews take over and the culture affects us. So many Jews don't even know about this dream. They don't even know that there's a concept of a ladder that you can climb rung by rung and get closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And we have such a beautiful Torah, it's so sweet, that we learn all day in yeshiva, and we want to take that Torah and spread it to as many Jews across the globe as possible. Be it in yeshiva, be it in college, be it in the airplane, be it anywhere in the world that you might go. The tools to take the Torah to climb that ladder. The Ksav Sofer says, why is it that the angels were going up and down? Because at first, the angels were on top, and man was below. But ultimately, man has the power to ascend higher than the angels. And the angels will come down. And the power of Torah can take us to the next level. There's no height, there's no end point to how high the ladder is. Because a person's growth through Torah and through connection to Hashem can soar to the highest points. But we need to teach others about this ladder. We need to spread the beauty of Torah, and we need to care about the Jewish people. This seminar is a statement on Motzi Shabbos that we care about the Jewish people. We want to spread Torah. We want to be able to climb that ladder together to reach the highest point. Anyone here for a trial session, please follow up with me after. We're going to have a little break after this session to bench and go right into the second session. Hopefully we'll finish Mir Hashem around 10:30. It's a big honor and schus to call upon Mati Berger, one of the most famous speakers in Asia Torah, to travel the world speaking and spreading Torah. And you'll get to know him through what he says, but his love for every single student on an individual level is unbelievable, and it's a big schus and honor to have Mati Berger, Forget About God, Who Am I? The first session of Destinaishions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibn See, I've been working in Asia Torah on my 33rd year, and so I had to sign a contract from the beginning that on my Essentials program I have to be a real nice guy. It's another way of saying I don't have to be a real nice guy with you guys. So what I'm here most trying to get a handle on who you are, how you got here, and then before you do Kiruv, anybody else, you better do Kiruv on yourself. Moshe Lamad over Doma, would we please turn off the phones in here? What makes you a Jew? Let's see, what we're picking on here. Yaakov, are you a Jew?
I'd like to think so.
You'd like to think so. Well, we'll see within an hour where we classify you. But if you are Jewish, if you're Jewish, what makes you a Jew?
What makes me a Jew?
Yeah, what makes you? Tell me you're not a goy. What makes you a Jew? What's your name?
Yosef.
Yosef. What makes you a Jew?
Bris Milah.
No, plenty going with Bris Milah. You're disqualified there on that one. And there may be Jews without a Bris Milah, and they're Jews, and they're going with the Bris Milah, and they're goyim. Hanidar ali nimuli. Right? Another. Somebody says, I will not get benefit from a nimo. He is forbidden to get hana from any Jew, even if he's not nimo, and he can get hana from any goy. Is not because nimo. So that doesn't make you a Jew. What makes you a Jew? Let's try again. Yosef, keep on going. Yeah?
Your mother's Jewish.
Your mother's Jewish. Yes, that sounds a little better, but not really, because what makes your mother Jewish? Her mother's Jewish. What makes her mother's Jewish. All right. In other words, God gave the Torah at Har Sinai, and all the people there became Jewish. Are you the descendants of the... What's your name? Aaron. Are you a descendant of those people? You have no idea. But if you are, you're probably a goy, because we can know that at the time of Matan Torah, there were 2 to 3 million Jews. If you looked at it demographically speaking, if you looked at it in terms of science, there are now a minimum 250 million people in the world today. How many Jews are there? 12, 13, 14 million, which means if you are a descendant of the people that were there, there's a 95% probability that you are a goy. What makes you Jewish is that Matan Torah took place approximately 100 generations ago. 3,300 years. I'm going to go through. The average generation lasts 33 years. That's according to demographers. And it works very well. I mean, because if you're frum, you start having your kids when you're 20, and you keep on going till 50. So the average there is your kids are average. Your average kid is born when you are 35. If you are more secular, so you're born, people start having their kids when they're 28, 30, they finish when they're 42, and once again 35. And as the range of when you have your kids differs, but 33 is an amazingly solid number. How old is a person? So 3,300 years ago, Matan Torah took place. You are approximately generation number 100 in the Jewish world. All right. What makes you Jewish is not that your ancestors stood at Sinai. That will explain 95% of the Goyim in the world were the descendants of people at Sinai. What makes you a Jew is they kept it all the way up till now. So Aaron, your family, is your family from?
Yeah.
And their parents?
Yeah.
All right, I mean, it's because we have different people. You are Jewish because your ancestors were Torah observant for 100 generations. You know all the fry people that we're going to ask you to make a difference to in the world? You know what makes them Jewish? Their ancestors were from for the first 97. If you ask those people who were fry, how far back do you have to go to the point that my family was... Well, you're Reform, you're conservative, you're secular. How far back do you have to go to the point that your family was Shomer Mitzvahs? Ooh, 3 generations, 4 generations. We know every generation people drop it. Why don't we have people say, my family was Torah observant for 80 generations, but 20 generations ago they decided to be secular. What do you call that person, Aaron? A goy. There are no such Jews. A Jew who drops Torah has 3 to 4, on historical terms, has 3 to 4 generations before they either do tshuva or they're goy. In fact, around now is the around now is going to be the 200th anniversary of the Reform movement. The movement's around for 200 years, but never a family. Those who were Reform in the early 1800s were going by the year 1900s. While the old ones became goyim, and there are books that talk about it, secular books. While the Reform became goyim, the Orthodox dropped into being it. The reason that they reach out more to goyim now is because Orthodox isn't dropping enough as commonly as they used to be. Used to be, an Orthodox Jew comes to America, 95% of his kids or his grandchildren will be Reformed. Basically, you have to understand the difference between the frumest Jew in the world and the fryest is that the frum Jew is a Jew because his family was Torah observant for 100 generations, and the fryest guy because they were only frum for 95 generations, 96, 97. Do you understand? The historical reality is, and perhaps that's one of the understandings I heard in the pack, God visits the sins of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th, the son, the children and the children, to the 3rd and 4th generation. Is that fair? What's your name?
No.
Noah. Is that fair that God punishes the 4th generation because the father did a sin? What's your name, Zach? Chanoich. Is that fair? That God punishes the 3rd and 4th generation? What's your name? Yeah, first name. Yosef Mordechai. Is that fair?
I don't know, ask God.
No, but right now I'm going to ask you. Why?
You're supposed to try to do better.
No. Avram was not punished because Yishmael was a shtunk. No, the Chazal say because the pasuk says al shileshim v'al l'soinai, to those who hate me. That is say, if the father does a chait, and then the kid does a chait, and then the kid does a chait, and then the kid does a chait, so God will punish the fourth generation if they keep on doing the chait. He doesn't punish the ones who are not doing the chait. If they stop. Well, wait a second. But why are you punishing? Why are you saying you're punishing the fourth because the first did the chait? He's doing the chait also because you may think. You may have a havamina to say that if your parents did the chait, you're going to go up there and show and say, well, it's not my fault. My father did it, so I was Machal Shabbos too. No. You are held accountable for knowing what your father did right and what your father did wrong. And if your father is Machal Shabbos, that's no excuse for you. Personally, I think that's why God invented, because I like studying psychology, I think that's why God invented teenage rebellion. Do you know how many times you kids have told your father that he's wrong? Good. That means when you go up in Shemayim and say, I couldn't help my father. You know how many times you knew your father was wrong? Good. Now you know that you're mechuyev to find out when he's wrong and when he's right. So of course it's fair. I'm not saying fair itself is a very weird word, but it makes sense that the fourth generation, if they keep the chait up, God does chesed to thousands of generations. See, I might think, well, big deal, Aaron's from. He comes from 100 generations of from people. No, Hashem says, you love God and you do a mitzvah. God says, I don't say it doesn't count because you came from people, because you were a teenage rebellion only. You could have said, I don't care, I'm going to drop it. And therefore, even though everybody you come from, the Torah, I'm going to credit you as well, because you could have made the decision to say no. Okay, so that's why it should go for thousands of generations to keep Torah. But why does it say 4 if you don't keep Torah? To the third and fourth generation, to those who drop Torah. Shouldn't it go to 1,000 generations if you drop Torah also? If they keep on doing the chait, shouldn't they be held accountable? First name? Yaakov. And we make this, you hear? Yeah. Good kasha. If 1,000 generations, if you keep Torah, God rewards the 1,000. Why does it say only to the third and fourth? First of all, is it the third or fourth? But why does the punishment not go to the 10th, 20th, and 1,000th? Very good. What's your name?
Jordan.
Well, Jordan say, because if you keep Torah, you can be Jewish forever. But if you drop Torah, you got 3 or 4 generations before you either become a Baal Tshuva or you're a Gur. You say it doesn't last more than 3 or 4. Even if reform's been around for 6, 7 generations, it never reformed Jew. You have the idea. And what we're going to be going through in this class, what is your chiyuv? When Hillel says, Imein anili mili, Yaakov, Hillel says, be selfish. And that's what he's saying. Can anybody translate Imein anili mili? Anything better? You got to be selfish. First name? Rabbi Chiel? Yeah, go ahead. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If that doesn't sound selfish to you, I don't know what doesn't sound selfish. If I don't take care of myself, ain't no one will. Right? Got to take care of me. And then, Shini lats me money. And I'm telling you, yes. The biggest tzaddik, a big tzaddik Lil says, you got to take care of yourself. You got to start with yourself. Remember, you flew over from America? Oxygen things come down. If you have somebody with you, ignore the kid, put it on yourself, then take care of the kid. Okay, you're both dead. All right. You got to take care of yourself. I want to tell you that the problem with life is not that people are too selfish, or they're not selfish enough. So today's class is called Forget About God, Who Am I? You cannot think about God until you know who you are. The 2 beginning parts are going to be very basic. Reb Noach points out, number 1, what do I know about it? It's actually, I'll speak Yeshivish. What is mechayev a person to keep Torah? What is mechayev you? A guy dies, you go up to Shemayim, God says, sorry. The guy says, oh my God, that Rabbi at Aish was right, there's a God and a heaven. The guy says, okay, can you please explain me why you lived your life like somewhere between a goy and a dog? So, I didn't know. that there was a God who gave a Torah? How should I know that Berger was right? He said, well, you should have asked questions. I did ask questions. I didn't ask your questions. What is mechayev somebody to find out that there's a God and that he gave a Torah? You hear the question? I'm asking you. It's a real question. What is mechayev a person for finding out that there's a God who gave a Torah? What's mechayev? You hear the question, yeah?
Is it what's the reason?
What obligates you to ask? God, let's pick, what's your name?
Zach.
Zach. Reb Zachariah.
Yeah, Reb Zachariah.
Are you Zachariah?
That's my Hebrew name. Yeah.
Wait,
I like Zach better though.
Are you a Jew or a Goy?
I'm okay.
Am I a Jew or a Goy?
Jew.
I'm a Jew. B'tzalel, am I a Jew or a Goy? I am both. He's a Talmud of mine. We won't even get into you yet, but you've got to understand that not only are you both a Jew and a Goy, but it's obvious that whatever you're doing wrong in life has to do with the Goyim around you. Where are you from, Zach?
Bergenfield.
That's American.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the Teaneck.
I gotcha. What's your favorite sport?
Running.
No, but watching, you like spectators.
Basketball.
You love basketball, right? How come and I ask the Americans, say football and basketball, and when I ask the British, they say soccer and rugby? Because you make your life without knowing it based on your goyim, and they make their life without knowing it based on their goyim. I'm talking about Torah and modern psychology. We both agree that who you are is massively. If you don't make conscious decisions, you are the reflection of whatever your local goy is. And if a nice Orthodox kid says, what exactly do we have against gay marriage? Well, 100 years ago, the average goy wouldn't have thought of the questions because your goy is different than their goy. And until you understand that we are a both, you'll never be, you really think you're a Jew with a little, until you understand that there's almost no you there, you'll never understand yourself. You sit there, plops out, there's me, and we're going to have to figure out who you are. And your Bechira will begin when you know that only God is one. Zach, God is one. You are a constant combination of opposites. And Bechira will be applying the question, okay, I see I'm these different things. I will choose who I'm going to be. Otherwise, you're simply going to be the result of basketball and New Jersey, Chris Christie. All right? So you got to understand that. Otherwise, you'll think you're you. Point number one. Point number two we'll do very quick. What is the number one? So again, what is mechayev you? What is mechayev every human being, Jew and Goy, religious, secular, what is mechayev everybody to know that there's a God who gave a Torah? First name again, Zach? Chanoich. You got an answer for me? All right. That means it's a good question. You don't know? Yosef Mordechai. You got an answer? What's mechayev? Do you hear the question? How should I get back to right? I was going to say, Zach, God created you to see automatically. You don't have to learn how to see. You don't have to learn how to breathe. God, you could have created me to know automatically that there's a God. All right? What is my first name?
Elior.
Elior. What's mechayev you?
Maybe like Yehafta, Shaldacha, or...
Too late. I didn't know who said that. You have to know that God said it. Yeah.
Is it just the very fact that you're here on this earth?
So what's mechayev? So listen carefully. You really have to get a handle on this. What is mechayev? The Ramchal tells us at the very beginning of Mesilas Yesharim, gives our Doma. First paragraph, he says, "Chayvas hadam ba'ilama." Wouldn't that shake you up when you think about this? Every man has found out your obligation. First name again?
Jordan.
Reb Jordan. What's the Hebrew name?
Shia Lior.
Shai?
Shia Lior.
Reb Shaya. Shaya. Like Yeshayahu?
Shia.
Shaya. Okay, Shaya is good. Shaya, the Ramchal says, you have to think, what is your obligation in the world? And what does he say in the next paragraph? What is your obligation? As the Chazal tell us, man was created for no other purpose, for getting the maximum pleasure from the infinite source. That's chayvas adam olam. Your chayv is basic. God created you to get pleasure. And every decision you make, and every decision every tzaddik makes, and every decision Adolf Hitler makes is all the same. What will give me more pleasure? This is so basic that you cannot choose it. There is no bechira on this. A guy comes and takes an axe, chops off his arm and says, now could you please explain why I just chopped off my arm was to get pleasure? And you will explain it to him. Please explain it. Obviously, it gave you more pleasure to prove Rabbi Berger wrong than to have a hand. I didn't say you can't make mistakes. Meanwhile, your hand's gone, and you haven't proved him wrong, so you would be really careful next time. Every decision a person makes is based on pleasure. There is no breaking that program. After all, what is the word that most defines God to Judaism? Tov. What else?
A giver.
Giver.
Echad.
Echad. One.
Infinite.
Infinite is what I'm looking for. All of the other ones comes from that. What we mean by God is, in other words, what's the first name?
Moshe David.
Moshe David came from something, he's finite, so he had to come from something preceding. Which are finite comes from something which are, right? Rambam telling you that the basis of all basis, to know that there's a cause that had no causes. Once you know that there's an infinite being, who said one? What's your name?
Shaul.
Shaul. Okay, what do we mean by one? How much is 1 plus 1?
2.
How much is 100 plus 100?
200.
1 billion plus 1 billion?
2 billion.
How much is 1 infinite plus 1 infinite?
1.
Right, that's what we mean one. One complete unit. God is one totality. Nobody else is. You, as we'll see, are constant internal combinations of conflicts, in which first you're a both, and then you have to understand from those both you have to have bechir to figure out which one is going to be the real, which one are you going to decide to deal with. Step number 1. God is infinite. Shaul, what can you do for an infinite being?
Sorry?
What can you do for an infinite being?
I'll serve him.
No, he's infinite. He already got it. In fact, he spends most of your life serving you. Without which there will be nothing left of you. What can you do for an infinite being? Nothing. If you sin, what is God missing? Nothing. If you're a tzaddik, what are you giving him? Nothing. So what do we mean about serving God? We talk about is that whenever God says, do this to connect to me, not for me, I'm God, it's for you. I want you to get not pleasure, I want you to get the maximum. I want you to get the only infinite pleasure, which is tap into the infinite loving source that created you, not for anything he gets out of it. That's called love. In this world, whenever you say, I have a problem here. God said so-and-so, but I want to do the opposite. And therefore, there are two possibilities. I'm making a mistake or God's making a mistake. No, again, you're making a mistake. Do what he says, not what you want. But not for him, for you. Do you understand? Jordan, we make sense?
Yeah.
To understand what's going on. So, the number one, every decision you make, the best of us and the worst of us, is the drive for pleasure. And anytime you decide to do something choshev, that robs you of pleasures, because it'll give you more pleasure to do that than to get the lower pleasures. A person is willing to go and die for a cause, because it gives him more pleasure to die for the cause than to live with the awareness that he sold out. It's a wonderful person. But he didn't turn his back on pleasure. He decided which is the greatest. And that's why we praise great people. What gives them pleasure? Number 1, you're a pleasure seeker. Number 2, what is the most important thing you need so that with this, you're more likely to get pleasure from your decisions. Without this, you're less likely to get pleasure from your decisions. These two should both spend more time. I really want to get into the bottom 3. What do you need? That with this, you'll get more pleasure. Without this, you get less pleasure. Yaakov, right?
Yeah.
Money?
Amuna.
Let's leave religion on it. Money. Is money going to give you more pleasure?
Not necessarily.
Not at all. Pleasure will just buy you even more trouble than... You hid without money. But at any rate, what do you need to get pleasure? What? Not necessarily. We'll hold that off. Bechira, free will, is basically your capacity to screw up your life. And I said, I don't know if that's the same as pleasure. Yeah? Okay, that's too religious from there. Zach?
Self-worth.
It's a help. So we're going to go into now just simple. Emes. What you need most is emes. If you want pleasure, you better find out what's emes. Let's look at it outside of Judaism. We get a lot of pleasure from modern medicine. So why do they keep on doing research on medicine? Don't we have plenty? No, we all know. The more we can know about medicine, the truth about medicine, the more likely the decisions the doctors make will result in pleasure. The more likely you don't know, the more likely you're going to screw up your life. In all cases, if you want pleasure, you better find out what's true. In religion, what did Elio and Hara Carmel say? How long are you going to hop on both sides of the... If God is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. Forget about whether your booby will cry because you marry some Baal worshiper. Forget it. Your booby isn't worth it. You want to get pleasure in life? Find out what's true. If God is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. If the Jews are right, do that. If the Christians are right, do that. Don't mess up your life. Are we making... Do you understand? You better find out what's true. You got it so far? You hear, Yaakov? And what happens if a guy says, I want to get pleasure and I'm going to ignore truth? What happens?
Drugs.
AIDS, drugs. But you know that if a person ignores truth, he wants to get pleasure and ignores truth, it will work short term. Zach, you ever hear the guy who want to learn how to fly, so he jumps off an Empire State Building, flopping at that? What did he say halfway down? So far, so good. Yeah, that's the short-term way of getting pleasure. So far, so good. But you have to understand, if you want pleasure, you better find out what's true. We got the basics here. You hear that idea? So, Zach, do you want pleasure in life?
Yeah, of course.
Do you want truth?
Even more.
I'll tell you what I usually hear when I don't give them the preamble for this. Do you want pleasure? Sure. Do you want truth? I guess so. Why is it that we're much surer that we want pleasure than that we want truth? So I'm going to look at three pieces which will come back to every one of us. Every one of us. Problem number one. Show, how old are you?
19.
19. At what age did you become a gadol, according to Judaism? 13. So are you an adult or a child?
Now an adult.
Mistake number one here. Let me posit the following. So at the day you were bar mitzvah, you were an adult, right? Think back, yes?
Yeah.
You were an adult? No wonder he doesn't trust Rabbi. 0 to 13, you were a child. When it comes to pleasure and truth, what is the difference between an adult and a child? An adult is someone who says, I want pleasure, I got to find out what's true. A child says, I want pleasure, and the heck with truth. To a child, pleasure means whatever it feels like when I do it. Do I have to go through the gruesome examples in every one of your lives in the last 1 month where you did the thing based on now rather than long term? Never mind. Don't get scared. Show. You are both a child and an adult. 0 to 13, you were a child. God himself said, you're a child. You want pleasure. You don't care about... At 13, between 13 and 20, you grow into it, those 7 years, to understand that if I want pleasure, I better find out what's true. But really what you are, Shaul, if you became an adult at 13, you are a 19-year-old child, because when you became an adult at 13, your child refused to leave. So from 13 till the day you die, Shaul, you're going to be Shaul and Shaul Incorporated. At the present time, you are a 19-year-old child that says, just do it, fighting for control with a 6-year-old adult that says, think ahead. It's a tough shot.
Yeah.
There's a 19-year-old Shaul that's been doing it differently for a hell of a lot longer than the 6 years. I'm 68, Shaul. Am I a child or an adult?
And like now that
Don't. I'm just kidding. Yes, you're right. You're right. Don't let me push you around. How tall are you?
like 6 foot.
Yeah, you're bigger than me. Don't worry about it. Okay. Shaul, am I a child or an adult?
Both.
I'm both. But am I more of a child or more of an adult? Be honest. Don't worry. I'm not going
More
to
of an adult.
explain why not.
You're still ready to learn more?
That's nice. No, an adult wants to learn. The child doesn't. Yeah?
You haven't found truth yet?
Jordan.
Because you've been a child for 13 years longer.
Because at 68, I've been a child for 68 years. I've been an adult for 55. You got it? I'm less unbalanced than you, but I'm still more of a child than an adult. Your problem number one. The adult says, I want pleasure. To get it? Reb Zak says, and I want truth even more. The Rambam Yerusha. Oisa emes v'neishu emes. Lishma is do emes because it will give you pleasure. Lishma is doing emes because emes. Ooh, it takes a long time to get there. An adult says, if I want pleasure, I better find out what's emes. The child says, just do it. Pleasure means what it feels like now. Who cares about the future? And every one of you, till the day, don't trust yourself to the day you die. Every one of you, because Adam was in balance. Ever since then, you are more of a child than you are an adult. And only by being aware of that can you override this. Can you override this? And say, okay, I understand that my natural self is a short-term thinker. But I can know that if I want pleasure, I need truth. And therefore, I'm going to work at being an adult, which is not my natural me. My natural me will always be the child. That is your first impressions in life. Do you hear the problem? But can you think of what mitzvah, I have my own thought, what mitzvah most forces you to be an adult? What mitzvah comes to mind? This is not it, by the way. What mitzvah comes to mind more likely to having children? You think God tell you to have children to populate His world? The Chinese do it better than us. No. What's your name?
Yaakov.
What?
Yaakov.
Yaakov. How old are you?
I'm 18.
18. Are you engaged to be married? No, the Chazal say get married between 18 and 20. Because not to populate the world, is that what you really need to become an adult is to have children that you love and take care of. There is nothing like having children that you love that will force you to be an adult for them. Because you don't want them to suffer because of your being a child. Of course, we, being children, want to put it off as much as possible because we don't understand what's really going on. Problem number one. You're both an adult and a child. You are both, Yaakov, but you are more of a child. You will always be more of a child than an adult. And therefore, your natural drive is pleasure. Truth is not at all natural to you. The bigger part of you is trying to avoid truth. And by the way, where there's always in the world a power source. Until the coming of Moshiach, there will be a power source that is the motivator of evil. It could be the Roman Empire, it could be the Greeks. It could be all, they're all Yetzer Hara, but they're always different sources of negativity in the world. Now, I believe, it's not even politics anymore. It's a multi-trillion-dollar economy. To make trillions of dollars, they spend billions of advertising dollars. Tell me, the people who make trillions of dollars off of you, what would they prefer? Would they prefer that you make decisions like a long-term thinking adult or like an idiot child? Child, all your life. And therefore, billions of dollars are spent every year to see to it that you stay an idiot child. Because to the extent you all end up thinking intelligently, the economy will crash. So not only are you personally shown, you are both an individual and part of a group, not only are you more of a child, but you're living in a world that has a major interest. You know, right now, in America, I don't know if you hear about this, you're learning all the time, you may not. This question of sex scandals in America and in Hollywood and things. I have one simple solution. Hilchos Tznius. You're not allowed to touch another woman. If you're not allowed to touch a woman who's not your wife, they wouldn't have the problem. No, I'm not going to try that. All right. Problem number one is in a world where you think you're an adult, you are not only both, but you're more of a child. Problem number two only gets worse. Aaron, are you a human being or are you an animal? What's going on there, huh? Moshe David, human being or animal?
Human.
Aaron has a chance. You are both human being and animal. Or put it differently, a human being is an animal that has a theoretical capacity to be more than an animal, as opposed to an animal that doesn't have the capacity to choose. We are both human souls and animal bodies. But which is more natural to you, Moshe David?
Animal.
Which is more natural to you, eating or making brachos? And if you finally make brachos, which do you do with more kavanah, especially when you're hungry? Again, until you understand that you think you're a unit, you think you're an adult, when in fact you are a both, with heavily tilted toward the wrong side. Until you know. Charles Darwin said that there is a 1% difference between the animal kingdom and us human beings. 1% different. We're like 99% animal, 1% human. What does Torah say? Kahela says, "Umaisar odam mina behema oyin." The difference between a human being and an animal is zero. The Tanakh, Kahela says that Darwin was an optimist, overly optimistic. Well, that makes sense because he was living in the 19th century, where all of the secular people said, "Let's just get rid of religion and we'll all be wonderful people." Whoops. There's nothing like a 20th century to create a Baal Tshuva movement afterwards. No, really. Ultimately, the Rebbeinu Shem gives us whatever we need to know how things really work. You try to project yourself. That's a nice, handsome kid and a thing, right? None of the scruffy beards over there, right? Yaakov.
Yeah.
Don't fool yourself. You're both a human being and an animal. You're involved in an internal struggle, and your animal is natural to you. Just like the child is, you have to work at overcoming the child. Your animal is natural. You have to work at being human. What are the two basic drives of a healthy male mammal?
Eating. Survival. Reproduction.
Survival is the result of doing it right. And of course, in the end, everybody fails. It's very important to know. When people talk about how hard life is, life is tough. The good news is it doesn't last forever. What are the two basic drives of the healthy animal? Food and reproduction. Food and sex. Begin to understand why the biggest areas of Shulchan Aruch are the laws that govern food and the laws that govern reproduction. Torah is the information of how to create a human being of you who starts out as an animal. Torah is in a world where God creates the world as an infinitely giving act. God said, I'm going to create a world where created beings can connect to God. I mean, think about the amazing thing. Nothing personal. How much do you weigh, Yaakov?
165.
165. Yaakov is 165 pounds. Yaakov and 165 pounds of rocks are essentially the same thing. Created beings. You and the rocks are made out of the same atomic elemental particles. Yeah, you're better organized. But it's the same stuff. I remember in second grade I was so shocked to find out that the atoms that make human beings are the same atoms that make rocks. I figure there's human atoms and there's rock atoms, you know. You and anything else in the physical world exactly have the same thing. You know what the difference between you and everything else? You have a capacity to be aware that there's a creator, and in a world where you want to get the most out of your existence, you can actually know that if there's an infinite source, and what can I do for him? Nothing. I know that the best thing I could I was created to connect to God, not for his good, for mine. And therefore, by the way, are you that selfish, by the way, Yaakov? Are you that selfish that everything you want is for you? Yes. Don't get fooled by that angelic look. Yaakov, how old are you?
I'm 18.
You want to get married one day?
Eventually.
Guys get nervous on there. All right, so Yaakov, you're going to get married one day. Now let's picture, a few years from now, you're engaged to be married. And I say, Yaakov, you look so happy. Yeah, I'm engaged. Well, fantastic. Who's the lucky girl? And then I say, Yaakov, why do you want to marry her? For her good or for your good?
Giving in turn creates.
And just ask for one word answer. Why do you want to marry her? For her good or for your good?
Both.
No, and I'll prove it.
My good?
One minute. Yaakov, you want to get married, right?
Yeah.
Very good. What's her name?
Don't know.
Right, who cares? It's obviously not for her good. What do I care? When I find somebody that'll be good for me, I'll try to hoodwink her into thinking I'll be good for her. You get it? Meanwhile, yes, I want to get married. It really doesn't matter who it is. I have no idea, and it doesn't matter. You get it? Right? You love X. Be real. You're not going to marry a girl because you love her. You're going to marry a girl because you love you. And when you come to the conclusion that that girl will be good for the one you truly love, you try to turn her into an ideal model of the, so that she really thinks you're good. By the way, you shouldn't feel too embarrassed because she doesn't love you either. Right? You're marrying her because it's good for you. She's marrying good because it's good for her. You ever been in a Jewish wedding?
Yeah.
Good. So now you know. A wedding is two selfish people trying to take care of themselves. Yaakov, what's the number one cause of divorce in the world today?
Money?
Marriage. No, not that you got married. It's why you got married. And the more you, being that you are both a Jew and a Goy, really think you love her, the more shocked you're going to be when you find out that you married her because you love you. Got to understand. Step number one. Yira Shemayim comes before Ava. Step number one. I'm going to marry a girl when I come to the conclusion that she's going to be good for me. Step number one. Step number two. Yaakov says, now that I've done my research, I don't rely on the dating to let you know she's a wonderful girl. Because at the dating, you know that you're going to fake who you are, right? You're going to put on your aftershave and smile and say the right thing, keep your mouth shut, right? You're going to be trying to fake her out about how nice you are, not realizing that she's 3 times the actress that you are the actor. And so you're going to go date. That's going to really tell you something. Hey, be real. Step number one, Yaakov. You say, I want to get married. Who she is of no concern to me. I'm just going to find, when time comes, I want to find somebody that's good for me. Wonderful. You see, that's the difference between Goyim getting married and real Jews getting married. Everybody gets married to a stranger. Just a frum guy knows he's getting married to a stranger. Much better than the shock you ever really think that she doesn't work out the way the movie in your imagination. Step number 1, Yaakov. You're going to marry somebody because she's good for you. Step number 2, you're an intelligent guy, so you say, I want this girl to be happy. Why? Why do you want her to be happy, Yaakov?
Happy wife, happy life.
Very good, because that's still selfish old Yaakov says, because the happier she is, the better off I will be. Wonderful. You're right on target, Yaakov. Once you find a girl that's good for you, you put yourself aside and be mavatic, be a giver. Knowing that the happier she is, the better it is for you. You get it? I want you to know there's something extra. Rav Hirsch, Rav Dessler point out, Avos from the word hav, to give. The more you put energy into another person's life, even though you're doing it for selfish reasons, that if she's happy, I'll be better off. But to the extent you give, you will love that person. That's the way it works. God willing, you're going to have children?
Yeah,
Right?
actually.
Are you going to love them?
I think so.
Well, but why do you think so? You never met them. You're going to marry a woman like that? I'll pick the woman and you'll pick. No, it's all right. I'll pick a girl for you and you'll show up. After all, who knows better what's good? An old guy like me or you? So I'll pick the girl for you and you'll marry her, right? Not a chance. But that's what your children are going to be like. Every child is a Hasidic date. You don't get to choose it. God said, this is your kid. And everybody knows darn well that you love your kids more than you love your wife. That divorce is much more prevalent between spouses than they are between parents and children. So how is it? How is it that every child, you don't even have one visit before you say, it's my kid? Because your child will come into this world with the greatest gift that God can give him, which is the ability to do nothing. You will have no choice but to give, so you might as well have no choice but to love. So which is greater, loving your children or loving your wife?
Children.
No. Loving your children is easier. Don't worry, Yaakov, sweetheart, it's all right. But do you hear the idea? Children, you're more likely to love your children, but that's why loving your wife is lufum tzara agra. To the extent you have to become an adult to be a giver and love the person you give to. When you got married to be selfish and take, yeah, you get there, and it's a much greater accomplishment. Yeah. And therefore, so the problem is, we are both human and animal. Our natural drive is food and sex, which we'll explain again why Shulchan Aruch tells us how to make our food choices, how to make our sex choices. But you have to understand, you are naturally an animal. Animals only care about pleasure. Truth is irrelevant to the animal. A human being knows, if I want pleasure, I better find out what sex. Do you hear? So now you got two things going against you in this thing. You want pleasure. To get it, you need truth. The problem is you are more of a child than an adult, and the child doesn't care about truth. You are both more animal than you are human, and animals don't care about truth. And in both cases, you have to make the decision to override that natural you, to be the adult, to be the human soul, and to find out what is true. See. Oh, and by the way, the major power in the world is a multi-trillion-dollar economy again. Would they rather you make decisions as a human being or as an animal? They're going to make a lot more money off of you manipulating you like an animal than if you'd be human. There's, along with your natural tilt in the wrong direction, is a world that will make much more money off of you if they help to destroy you in your attempt to go through life. See. And by the way, this I don't go into now. This is really figuring out Hakina Hataiva Vakovod Motzina Sodom in Olam. You'll figure out yourself. See. Yaakov. Are you an individual or are you part of a group?
Both.
What do you say, Shaul?
Part of you.
Or both?
Say part of you.
You are both, but which one are you more?
Probably individual.
This is more lopsided than the other two. You are massively. Remember, if 20, 30, 50, 80, 95 years ago, your great-great-great-great-grandfather decided to become Fry or convert to Christianity, the chances of you being a Jew are way below slim. Odds are way, way below 1% possibility. You are Jewish massively because you come from the group that made the right decision. And we're still on the edge of the cliff, aren't we? We are both, this is even more lopsided, we are both individuals and part of a group, but we are massively more the result of our group. So much so that the Chazal, although if we work really hard, we can be adults. Harder than you think. If we work hard, we can make human choices. You can never be a truly... Avram was the exception to the rule. Avram was the one who's willing to break away totally as an individual, but he still created a Jewish people, and God gave the group that was willing to commit to Torah. If a group's willing to say Na'aseh v'nishma, that's when the Jewish people start, not from a yochid. And you are more result of your group so massively that can you understand that if you want to be a frum Jew and you move to Boise, Idaho because you get a good job reference, 20 years later you're going to be shocked as to who you are. Because Odom Nimshach Achar Svivosov, we are all massively a result of the world around us. Now, let me try this out. Your family belong to an Orthodox shul?
Yes.
Yes. What city?
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. For those New Yorkers here, can you be Orthodox in Columbus, out of town? Okay, well, we'll leave it. Okay, Columbus, Ohio. Are there people in your shul who wear black hats on Shabbos?
Yeah.
Are there people in your shul who talk during laning?
A lot. Most. Yes.
Yeah, simple yes. Uh-huh. Now, what if I were to ask you, Al Pi Halacha, which is worse, not wearing a black hat on Shabbos or talking during laning?
Talking during laning.
Talking during laning. 1,000%. Not wearing a black hat is kimat, no, it's an identification of the group. Talking during davening and laning is, the Mechaber says, Godal avono minsai, the sin is too great to be born, v'gorimbo, and you should yell at him. I asked Reb Nevenzel recently, should you yell at people? And I said, well, the Mechaber says you should yell at them, but don't do it because if you do, then when you do it, they'll yell at you. Better not. Is there anywhere in the Shulchan Aruch that says that if you don't wear a black hat, Gadol Avono means so? No. But it does say it about talking during God. But these people will wear a black hat, but they're going to talk during. In other words, you don't have to be a Reformed Jew to lose yourself, to do clearly wrong things because of your oilam. You could be a very Orthodox Jew. And the reason you're talking is not because you never learned it, not because it doesn't make sense. Every goy, if you were to have a goy in your shul, somebody making a bar mitzvah, and a goyish friend comes, and he talks during davening, and you go up to him and say, hey, Chris, no talking at this point of the davening. What would he say? Why not? Or would he say, oh, I'm sorry. What would he say? Of course I'm sorry. Of course, it's obviously you shouldn't be doing it. So if Chris, the nice goy, knows it, how come he doesn't know it? Not what he knows, because he also abdicates to his group. And he's willing to do the thing that's so obviously wrong as long as he can get away with it. He doesn't even think about it. We haven't got yet to the 7 billion people in the world who are becoming so disastrously degenerate by the world around us. We're talking about the 1% who made it as Jews. And we're still abdicating that decision-making. And by the way, a multi-trillion economy, what do they run their advertising as? They want you to make a decision as an individual or to be desperate in your to create enough lack of self-esteem so that you'll do anything for your group to say you're a good guy. Of course they'd rather have you be a group. You have not only your natural self, 0 for 3, but the world down here who has a major interest in maintaining you being a child, an animal, and part of a group. You're the problem. I was talking to a group of women who were here for Asia Torah Chizuk mission, religious background, secular background. We were talking about this. I said, they were talking about the problems in the West now with these harassment suits about all these famous people. And I said, all you need is halacha. You're not allowed to touch another woman. They'll never do it because while they pretend to be upset, their entire economy runs on being driven sexually mad. Picture. They talk about women's equality. So why have so many differences? You look at the Oscars or the Emmys, a hush of a group of secular people get together. 1,000 men and women. What are the men wearing? Suits. What are they wearing?
Tuxedos.
Tuxes. Black and white, no muscle shirt to be seen. They dress like Haredim, except that they're not frum. And they all insist on looking the same. All the women are half naked, and all of them insist on dressing differently. What's going on? Equal. Why do they make such different decisions? The men are all dressing the same and cover up their individual elements of their body, and the women. The answer is because in the animal kingdom, the males are the natural power. That when an animal, a higher mammal, hits puberty, the male produces the testosterone that produces muscle. The female produces estrogen that produces fat, which is great for babies, but not great to keep you alive in a jungle. All right, so what do? The answer is simple. The female says, I will display how much I am available for sex by the males. And in return for that, I'm going to make myself available to a male, in return for which he's going to take care of me. Ask the more secular guys to come through Asia Torah. And they keep on saying that, girls who run into are so stupid. They're not stupid, they're desperate. You give them a line, and they say, I knew it, he really means it. It's not that they're stupid, it's they're 99% part of the animal kingdom. See, in the animal kingdom, the males don't lie. They really do take care of you once you allow them to have sex. It's human beings that make up a line and then dump them. In the animal kingdom, once they have your babies, you actually take care of them. Human beings perfected pills and condoms, the next thing you know. And you can't figure, they're not stupid. They're desperate. And they don't know that they're 99% part of the animal kingdom. And if you can leave it up to the multi-trillion economy, that's just fine for them. Just fine. Torah says, from the Big Bang to the higher primates, I do it. But when it comes to Odom, Nasa Odom B'Tzalmeinu, I think the Bnei Yisroel says. What does it mean, Nasa? I'll make an Odom. Rashi says Hashem talked to the Malachim, Hashem talked to everything he created before. But Bnei Yisrael says Hashem was talking to Adam, Nasa Adam. Hashem says to Yaakov, let's make an Adam of you. Do you understand that God can not make an Adam of you? God can make the animal, gives the information called Torah, and you choose whether you're going to be the Adam or the behemoth. Nasa Adam, I can't make an Adam. Because Adam is the animal that I give the capacity to choose difficult choices to be an Adam. And an Adam that chooses to be an Adam is the one that can have a relationship with God. We can look at this. So you know what's going on in the world out there. The more the world says, let's picture. An Orthodox kid comes to me and says, why are you living with that? I have a girlfriend and this, that. He asks me questions that 100 years ago the average goy would have been too embarrassed to ask because he understood. Why? Because this Jewish kid, he thinks this is the problem. The problem is really here. When you have a group of a Christian world, the goyim around us who says, you can't do that without getting married. Hormones didn't change between teenagers 100 years ago and teenagers now. The hormones are the same. But when you have a world that says, doing that, we're going to give you unbelievable bizayon, it's amazing how much you can make the human decision. But when the world changes and says, no, now the world will give you just as much cover, maybe even more, if you're a behemoth. And at that point, you find yourself almost incapable of making the right decision. But the problem is not merely that you're more of an animal than you are human, is that you picked the wrong world that you're a part of. You're not part of a Torah community, you're not part of Jew. And now you are no longer part of a Goyish community that no longer has values. Once that group collapses, don't be surprised how many Jews will collapse in there too. Yeah, but I really don't believe God gave the Torah. I don't believe there's a God. Again, Rabbi Chanan goes through in the first thing in Kovetz Mamorim. I don't go into that different class. Nobody is stupid enough to be an atheist. No, you are not having illicit sex because you're an atheist. You're an atheist because you want illicit sex. It's as simple as that. Then when the Gemara Bracha says, Lo sesu achrei levavchem, don't go astray after your heart, zuminus, it's atheism. What do you mean? Atheism is a cheshbon in your head. No head is that stupid that everything comes from nothing and continues along the way. Nobody is that dumb. Lo sesu achrei levavchem tells you that if you go what your heart wants to do, if your desires and lusts are what it is, that is the source of atheism. Atheism is not sourced in a brain. It's sourced in your titles. And therefore, the more that we surprise, God comes and says, well, I'm an atheist. Really? Whoa. Could you please go through your understanding of the 7 arguments that Judaism makes that there's a God, and then refute them? You don't know what I'm talking about. He never looked at the thing. He doesn't care about the information. I need to be an atheist to feel more comfortable about it. So, I'm an atheist, great. Hakol mutorim lo, hakol shruim lo. Ain kanle. Again, Yaakov, is it fair that God gave us a world that's so tough? You're darn straight. You don't become a Navy SEAL by being a wimp. You become a Navy SEAL by working on. You know what percentage of kids become Navy SEAls from the time guys who start signing up till they actually get diplomas? You know what percentage become Navy SEAls? 3%. That makes sense. The same thing as the 3% of the people at Maimon Har Sinai, whose descendants now are still going to be B'nai Torah. It's a tough job to create a human being out of yourself. Just don't fake yourself out, and certainly don't try to fake out anybody else. God created a world to create human beings. The being that created the animal that can choose to be human and connect to God. 3%, it makes sense that 3% of the Jews at Matan Torah, that their descendants will actually make it. But to understand, how then do you ever make it? That one thing at the end makes it for you. Yaakov, are you a child or an adult?
Both.
You are both. And frankly, you're more of a child naturally, because that's how you started. But now you have free will. You know what free will is? The ability to say, I am both. What is free will? You take his here, and what do?
Choose.
Well, if you have free will, and what do you really want? I want pleasure, and to get it I have to find out what's true. That's Lishma is to know that truth is the highest pleasure, but you don't have to get there. Yer Shemayim is fine. Free will says, if I want to get pleasure, I better find out what's true. So now, Yaakov, are you a child or an adult?
Both.
You were before. Now with free will, are you a child or an adult? Whatever you choose to be. You're essentially, you start out as the essential both, but with free will, so Yaakov is it? And so what if you just made a choice that makes it clear that you're an adult? Does that make you an adult from now on? No. A minute from now, you have another choice to be made, right? Always be open to that. Yaakov, are you a human being or an animal? You're both. But with free will, which one are you? Whichever you choose to be. It's a Nasa Adam, the Rebbeinu Shalom says. Me and you together are going to make an Adam of you. God says, I can't make an Adam. Because an Adam is the person I give the capacity to choose to be one or the other. And in a world where you are both an individual and part of a group, you're both, until you know with free will, whichever one I choose to be. You have to know, don't expect to be an Avraham Avinu. Don't go moving out to Boise, Idaho. You have to choose the group well. But if it's World War II, where we're fighting, there's a Nazi army and an American army and an Allied army. You have to understand, this is no time to go buy your own little pop gun and say, I'll make my own little Orthodox about it. Because at that point, you're like the Swiss. You say, well, I can't really make a decision. Right? In Shemaim, the Swiss and the Nazis will be together. In a world where there's the Nazis and the Allies, in a World War II scenario, you have to know, which army will you choose to be with? And in that army, you can choose to be, there are different ways of doing it. You can be a private, you can be a cook in the mess tent, and take care of the cook for the army. You can be a financier, selling war bonds to keep the army going. You could be a sergeant, you could be a colonel, you could be a general-in-chief of all the armed forces. There are many ways that you can be in the right army. Just you can't sell out. You have to know what the war is about and understand that in 120 years when I stand before the Rebbeinu Shalom, he's going to ask me, okay, you chose the right group. Who's the you made? Many different ways you can do it. Right? Learning all the time, supporting the money, you suffer as full. Many different ways. But you cannot make it by choosing am I a Nazi or not one of the Allies. You have to know what the war is about. And understand. Free will means until I understand that until the day I die, I am both a child and an adult and more of a child, I can never exercise free will. Because I'm sitting there enraged at God. If you don't ever get in touch with how angry you are at God over the fact that He's God and you're not, you'll never be able to overcome it. Get in touch with it. What's your name? Eric. Did you ever feel really angry that God's God and you're not?
Why not?
Get in touch with it. Ein Hanami, you'll be able to figure that's a child. Same reason you're irritated with your parents, that he's the parent and you're the child. But get in touch with it. Deal with it. The fact that you'd much rather be an animal. And, don't be surprised that, forget about Goyim. We look at the wardrobe of the B'nai Yeshiva and find that they're wearing things which a French pimp may be embarrassed to wear 20 years ago. And begin to understand that, of course, you're a Ben Torah. You're also a Goy. You're also a child. You're also an animal. I'm both a Jew and a Goy, and so is everybody else. But sit there and figure out, before you tell me why you did it, you had better be able to trace back and figure out what it is about the world you're in. Because you will never take back control of your life if you're not willing to admit how much you're abdicating to somebody out there to determine who you are. So I'm going to tell you the same thing I would say to all the fry kids at Aish. I'm not saying that therefore you got to become frum tomorrow, but you had better know what's causing you to be warped and to understand how to begin take back control of your life. It means knowing that it's much better for you to be an adult, a human, and join the right group in order to be a real medal winner. Free will requires you to know what the conflict is about. God is one, you are not. You can make a difference to others to the extent you're willing to accept the fact that you are part of the fight. And when you analyze this consciously, you will understand your irritations, your difficulties. It's like psychiatry. Until you are aware why you feel certain things, you will never be able to override it. Once you know this, you can ask, okay, what do we mean by God? How do I make the connection? But it will have to be your adult, your human, and your radical capacity to say no to whatever group that's doing the wrong thing. Even if you join a group that's doing the right thing. In order to say, if I really want pleasure, I can understand, I can really appreciate finding out what's true. Questions. We have about 5 minutes for questions, answers. Questions. First name?
Max.
Mac. Whatever you like. What? Max.
In the beginning, you were talking about that it's like after a couple of generations that you're not considered a Jew.
No.
Religious.
Well, let me. You finish first. You finish first.
I don't understand because what I understood was that like after a couple of generations of them not being religious, then they're not Jews, or like they're considered goy. But I don't.
I'm glad you asked the question, and I can see the issue of confusion. What I am saying is, when people say there are 13, 14 million Jews, we are not talking about which people in the world are there whose mother were at Mount Har Sinai when they said Naz ben Ishmael. That there are probably at least 100 million Goyim who, if you're going to trace their families, their mothers, they just lost track of it. What I'm saying is that when a family drops Torah, after 3-4 generations, they either are Goyim or are so stuck within the Goyish world that they and we have no idea who they are.
They can still be like.
No, at that point, when let's picture the Goy out there who's actually a Jewish neshama. It does him no good at all, because until he does Torah, he doesn't have any connection. He will not be punished when he dies by the fact that he could have done so and so. But he will have no more than any Goy who was not a Jewish neshama.
Doesn't he always have his neshama until he?
It doesn't make a difference if you don't do Torah. If you don't know there's a God, what is the halacha of a Jew who said, I don't believe in God? Of course he has a pintul yid, and he has no connection to God. Understand, schar v'einish, we can look at as children or as adults. Schar v'einish is God will give you schar for what you do right. I want you to look at it as an adult for a moment. There's only one schar, Max, and that is the quality of your relationship with God. There's only one einish, and that is the quality of your relationship with God. Who determines the quality of your relationship with God? You or God? You. In other words, in a world where a relationship between any two people is only as strong as the one who wants it least, it doesn't matter whether God wants a relationship with you, Max. To the extent you say yes, the relationship will be there. And to the extent you say no, it's not. And therefore, it doesn't matter what God says, kiviyachol. If the guy has no ability to be aware of making that relationship with God, he's not going to have any more than the guy without the neshama. Now, there is a concept, Baal Tanya, others talk about, that's really what a ger is. It really, a goy can't do it, and that what a ger is a Jew that got lost, and the Rebbe Shem gives him special opportunities and comes in, and he becomes that's Rebbe Shem's kachesed. I mean, that's separate thing. That we say that a goy who's megar is a Jew, and the Baal Tanya, he's not saying any difference. Al pi halacha says the same thing. But what it is a Jewish neshama who was lost, and the Rebbe Shem gives them opportunities to come back. But so, I'm not saying iluz, I'm saying that's what happens. That if you say there are 13, 14 million Jews, and 100, 200, 300 million goyim who have the neshama, if you don't know it, they can't do anything about it. Yeah, first name? Benji, yeah.
I don't think that the reason why that there's 100 million Jews, 100 million goyim, are also their ancestors were at Har Sinai. They're just not Jewish because of some other reason. I'm pretty sure the reason why is because of persecution and intermarriage. Those people do not have Jewish mothers. People who are us as Jews, the reason why we're Jewish is as a nation, all of us had mothers who were mothers who were at Har Sinai because of intermarriage. And
no question. But Benji, every human being on earth had a mother who had a mother who had a mother. And therefore, some of them went through the wrong way, some went the right way. Therefore, it still doesn't change the fact that for everyone who was a man who lost it because he mixed with Goyim was a woman who continued. And therefore, in a world where there's people whose mother, every Goy has a mother's mother who was alive at the time of Har Sinai. Therefore, we're saying, many of them are Goyim. But a particular number, there are more Jews, there are a higher number of Jews that are Jews there than are the 13 million who know it. Yeah.
God is infinite. God doesn't need anything from us. So why did He create us?
What's your first name?
Aaron.
In other words, God is underlining the fact of what a selfish blankety blanks we all are. In other words, Aaron is saying, I'm doing everything selfishly. And now you're saying, but God too. Why is God doing it? You tell me. In other words, you and I, we do it because we've come to the conclusion it's good for us. Why? Because you're a finite being putting together with imei nanili mili. The only difference is an infinite being who, having no needs, either does it not at all or out of love. That's the idea of olam chesed yibonah. What does he get out of it? Aaron?
Yeah.
What does God get out of it?
He wants us to be like him?
No. Nothing. That's why it's called love. To whatever you come up with as something, it's because he gets something out of it too. And we're talking about love is by nature. The concept of the nachas, giving nachas ruach lavod, that on a concept of love, that which we say you can't do anything is in the world of self-interest. In the world of love, you can always focus on ani ladodi v'dodi li. But we're saying, why did he do it? Love, nothing else, as opposed to me and you. When you know that, you begin to understand what it means to be a human being in this world. And understand how naturally animal we are, where everything we do is based on what we need, and to understand how much we really care as human beings to get to the point of love, where I don't do it because of me, but because of Ava. And that's the Mahu Afata, to understand that that's what you're trying to become. You will never become totally like Ava, but to whatever extent you do out of Ava, even though everything will be a combination of Ava and self-interest, even with your wife and your kids, to whatever extent you lean it toward that chelek, you're becoming more like God. Okay, we have another speaker? Okay, 30-minute stretch. I really appreciate it. Really important to talk about.